I've had all of my reusable mop pads sell out on Etsy, so I'm finding myself in a position of needing to scramble to make some more. So while I'm at it, I figured I would show all of you how I make these hot pads. So I have these hot pads here, and I make these for the Swiffer WetJet. They work really, really well. This is one that personally I own, that's why it's all dingy. And then I have a different mop because unfortunately my Swiffer WetJet just shorted out or something about a year ago. So I had to shift to a different mop. So I have this Libman mop, and I think they call it the Libman Freedom Mop. I believe I probably have the head put on backwards because it came off one time when I was trying to remove the mop head, or when I was trying to remove the mop pad. The mop pad that comes with this, when you remove it, it's like you need the jaws of life or something. So for quite a while, I have been wanting to make reusables, at least for myself, just so that I can have this. And I can put a few of these up on Etsy, see if anybody wants to buy them, because maybe they have the same complaint. So the Libman, this is the way the Libman mop pad looks. So it looks like this, and it has what they call this microfiber, I guess. I'm not really a fan of the microfiber, quite frankly. I tend to like terry cloth a lot better. And then this material, I don't even know what it's called. They just call it an ABS compatible material. And when I looked up ABS, it was something about it being a plastic, and they use it for Legos. And it's basically the plastic that they use for these little bitty gripper teeth. And so something about that compatible material makes it so these little gripper teeth can grip into it. They grip a little too well for my taste. So I will be using the same thing for gripping to that as I use for the Swiffer WetJet. And as far as I know, this size is potentially the same size as also the Bona spray mops as well. I haven't verified it, but as far as I can tell looking online, it seems to be about the same size. So since the Bona spray mops are always rectangular instead of that trapezoid, then I'm going to have mine be rectangular too. This here is my prototype that I made up, and I tested it out earlier. It does work. I washed it. That's why it doesn't look all disgusting and grungy. And so I'm going to show you how to make this too at the same time. All right, so the first thing you need for this is you definitely need the fabric that you're going to have on the side where you're not mopping it. And so I have this fabric that should work pretty well. And then you also need this terry cloth. And so I have this in pink. So I'm able to match that up. That's really nice. And this terry cloth I've already cut to the width that I need. I'm going to go ahead and cut this to the width that I need. What I'm cutting right now is I'm cutting for this Libman mop. So this, my prototype ended up being just barely the right size. I would kind of like to have it just slightly bigger. So I'm going to do that for this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this 17 inches. All right, now I need it on the other side. All right, so this will be enough to make 6 of these, 6 of what I need for mop pads, that is. So I am going to go ahead and just cut out the one. So all I need is just the width of this cutting ruler, which is 6 inches. All right, so that gives me my top. And then let's see about the Swiffer. So the Swiffer is a different size. And for the Swiffer, we need a smaller thing. That one I kind of cut off. And by the way, you can actually serge these. That works well as well. But I won't be doing that. I'll be doing mine at the sewing machine. For the Swiffer, what you need is you need this size. So this size ends up being 6 by 12. So 6 inches for the width of it, and then 12 inches for the length of it. And then these are just, this is part of a bunch of them that I had cut up all at the same time. So I'm just going to use that and save you the tediousness of watching me cut this out. And then what I like to do with these is I like to kind of cut these little corners. So I'm going to go ahead and do that with this one. So this is just really simple. And I'm not even really that concerned about having it be super exact same going around. So I look at it like, this is something that you're using on your floor, so close enough is good enough. We're not trying to win a quilt competition with a mop pad. But this is a great use for scrap fabric that you have. This is an awesome scrap project. And if you do have those flat mops, this is a really good way to go. So now that I have both of these cut out, I need to have the bottom side. And so in the case of the Swiffer, now this side I have terry because personally I prefer it, but you can take microfiber, and you can take these little microfibers that are about 11.5 inches, and what you can do is you can cut them out. You can cut them in half, and so that's what I've done here. So it does mean that when I line this up, that I am going to have to actually put this one on the top so that I'm not missing out on it. But what I do here is I just cut it in half, and then I also notch it just like I did there, because in the case of this, because it is a little bit smaller, I do need to do that. Now, if I was doing terry cloth, then I do 6 by 12 inches. And so I cut all of these 6 by 12 inches because I don't know until I'm actually doing it whether I'm going to go with terry or microfiber that time. So in this case, I have microfiber, and so this is just a way to kind of show you one of these ways of doing it. Also, one of the things that I like to do is I like to kind of cut this bit off of at least the long side. And so that's what I did on one of these sides. And so that is that. And that's for the Swiffer. So let me go ahead and show you the terry cloth. I have already cut this to the size that I need. And so just like with the top, I go ahead and I just cut one of those. And then in this case, I'm not even going to worry about doing the little notches because I have it close enough. I'm going to put this one right side down against the terry cloth, and then I can get that moved aside, and that will be waiting for me to get through the next step here. Okay, so back to the Swiffer here. So I like to use batting scraps whenever I can when it comes to making these. And so what this is this is actually a couple of scraps that you can see right there. And what I have done is I have this fusible batting tape, and I use that and I just join them together. And it works perfectly fine because, it's all on the inside of it, and I end up doing some stitching on the top, so it's not like it's going to come apart and shift. So that's an idea. This is great for your batting scraps as well. And so again, this is going to be a 6 by 12. And so in this case, we're going to put this on top of here, and that will be the sandwich, like that. And now I can put that one aside. And then for this, I need that 6 by 17 inches. And so I have, where did it go? I'm looking for, oh, there it is. And so I have some batting scrap for that as well. This is actually batting scraps that is polyester batting, and that's what I used in my prototype. It still works perfectly fine. Most batting I use is cotton batting, so you can go either way with this. So if you happen to have some polyester scrap batting on hand, this will work great for that too. So I can just line this up. I'm not even going to worry about completely trimming it to size because it will be fine. Okay. So now I have that one set up for the Libman mop. And then I have one more step. My final step is I want to have this little pull tab so that you're not getting your fingers into the muck as much as if you try to grab it that way, conventionally. And so I have this little pull tab, and what this is this is made out of twill tape. So you could also use ribbon for this. If you had ribbon that was about, anywhere from like maybe 3/8 of an inch wide to 1/2 an inch wide, I think that would work really well. I happen to have twill tape because I sell these and it works perfectly fine. And so for this, I want to have this be something that's maybe about like that. So it looks like I need about 3-inch bits on this. So I need 2 of these, and I just eyeball it. That's all I do. I just eyeball it, and that works fine. All right. So for the twill tape, I'm going to take that, going to loop it like that, and then just going to figure out where that middle is. I don't you know, I don't really care about being that exact. And so I'm just going to put it right about there. And I could use a pen. So a pen works great for keeping all of those layers together. And that works just fine. And then for this one, I'm just going to loop that like that. And then tucking it between the two layers there. And then one of the things that I frequently use is I will use these binding clips. So if you're like me and you have a bunch of binding clips on hand because you're a quilter and you bind your own quilts, then you can use that. Otherwise, you could just use a pen to hold it in place. So, yep, that looks fairly centered. Okay, so now it's time to sew these. So I want to go ahead and just start this on the side here. And just back tack. And then I'm just going to stitch this all the way around. Now that I have them stitched up, I need to trim them before I go ahead and flip and turn them. That is an easy enough thing to do. I just go through and just clip off these corners. This one ended up being a little too long that way, so do that. So I clip off that, and then I've got this corner here to clip off. Okay, and then I can just clip off the threads as well. That's always a good idea. And then the same thing on this one. And you know, I'm not worried about this extra fabric being under. It's more just getting rid of that bulk of the batting. So let's just get rid of that really quickly here. All right, so now I'm ready to just go ahead and turn these out. The microfiber really clings to whatever it's against. So that's why some people like it, because it's really good at gripping the dirt. But I find it's a little harder to push on the floor. So it's not really the one of my choice. I do have one of them from when I had a Swiffer. But I just always preferred the terry cloth ones because I felt like they just glided on the floor easier, but it's a personal preference. Certainly the microfiber is really good at gripping the dirt off of the floor. So just make sure you poke it all out like that. And so this, you can do that on the iron, or you can just kind of finger press like I'm doing there, and that works fine as well. And then you can use pens. I like to use the clips. So there we go. So I have my clips. And there we go. We've got that one. And then we need to turn this one out as well. So these little tape tabs, these twill tape tabs, you know, they turned out real nice. They're sticking out really nice there. So that works very nicely. And then again, I like to just kind of give it a press, either with the iron. I usually do it with the iron, but just to save time, I'll do it with my finger nail there. And then I just fold under that terry cloth, just smooth it out pretty well like that. And then I just clip that opening closed. And then that way I can get that stitched up. And then I can just get rid of that extra little thread. And there we go. One thing about working with either the terry or the microfiber is you end up with a lot of the little bitty loose bits everywhere. So just keep that in mind, that you're going to have to kind of clean up your workspace because you'll end up with a bunch of this. So now for doing a top stitch around, and I won't be finished one more step before I'm done. All right, so now we have these stitched up, nice little top stitching all the way around, and both of these tabs are stitched down, very nice, makes it presentable. But I'm not done with this yet, because this cotton material is not going to stick to that hook side that's on the underside of these flat mops. So I will show you what I use, and it does stick to it. I use just regular, ordinary felt. This actually works really well. This works especially well on the Swiffer, and I realize that most of you are probably here because you want to find out how to make up a Swiffer one. A lot of people, they will use the loop side of Velcro tape, but usually that is sold with both hook and loop. Is kind of a waste, and it can be a little expensive to buy just one side of that. It is possible, but it's like a special order type of a thing. Felt works really well. You can get felt. Unfortunately, Joann's is closing forever, so that was where I tended to get felt. But you can also, I believe you can get felt at Michael's. You might even be able to get felt at Walmart as well. And just some different craft stores you can get felt. This is felt by the yard. So I can't really speak to whether you can get felt by the yard at other places other than possibly getting it online. But this would work with those felt squares as well. So I have some felt cut out that is a good size for the Swiffer. I'm actually going to trim this just a little bit more just to make this a really good size. I'm just going to kind of eyeball that. And then I think, let's see, I think I'm going to trim that right there. And that should work really nicely. So I do like to cut these to about 10 inches, but looking at this right here, this is more like 9 inches, so you could do 9 inches instead. I was probably doing 9 inches before and I just forgot. So these you could do 9 inches, and then it's 1 inch wide, and that's for the Swiffer. And I find that that works really well because if you look at the underside of the Swiffer mop, it's 1 inch wide. It pretty much goes the width of the mop head. This mop pad is wider than the mop head. So like I said, it works pretty well. And then you just need like kind of a center point here. So, you can kind of see, so like that little B area, that's kind of like a center point there. And so I'm going to look on here, and basically what I want is I want about 2 inches between these two strips. So that one I could put right there. And with this, I just like to put pins into place. And so I just put pins to keep it in place like that. And then I can use this one to just orient where I need to put the other one. Oops. So there we go. Okay. So that needs to go about right there. I'll just scoop it just slightly. Okay. And then just pin it in place. And then I will be stitching that on for the Swiffer. And then for this one, I'm going to go with 1.5 inches wide for that felt to match up with that kind of a hook sort of a thing that they have on the underside of that. On the underside of that, they actually have like 3 strips. So they have like a strip there, and then they have a strip in the middle. But I think I can just do the 2 on the outside and it should work pretty well. At least it did in my prototype. I'm just going to cut that out. I have this felt doubled up, so that makes it really easy. All right. So I have those 2. This is definitely bigger than what I need, so I'll trim it down. So here is my mop pad, and I'm just going to line this up to see where I want to put this. All right, so I'm just going to eyeball it here, and then we'll see what that ended up being. Now, just for perspective, earlier when I cut it, I actually cut that bit off. So that's probably about 3/4 of an inch more that I cut off this time. So this ends up being, right there. This ends up being 13.5. So I think 14, I think you could do 14 inches and that would work just fine. And then with this one, because of the way the mop head is, where it's actually off to the outer edge sides like that with the hook, I want to go ahead and have this more towards that, just so that it'll actually be in the right kind of a place to be able to grip. So that's why I'm doing that. I think I'm pretty satisfied with that. I'm going to go ahead and pin these into place. And then all I have to do is just stitch these down on these Velcros, and I will be done with these. We'll come back for the testing after I get these sticked. All right, now to show you this in action, I'm going to use my prototype, because the one that I just made, I'm probably going to put that one up on Etsy to sell that. Just easy enough. I'm just going to position that. There we go. And then I'm just stomping that down, and then see? So it is lifting. It's staying with the mop. So let's go ahead and take this for a spin. Like I said about the mop head actually being reversed. Whoops. This area down here is where my husband works, and he works as a brass musical instrument repairman. And so he cleans a lot of instruments. He also buys instruments and refurbishes. And he ends up going through here and dripping these different instrument parts all the time. It gets pretty dirty here. All right, the moment of truth here. So here we go. And it's stuck to the mop pad pretty well. So that is great. I was able to, actually I ended up doing that because this got kind of caught under, but I can use that. And then this is pretty dirty and grimy and gross. And so that's just off of doing just a really small amount of his workshop floor area. So I hope this was a helpful and informative video on how to make a couple of different mop pads for the flat mop, the Swiffer mop, and the Libman mop, which might also fit the Bona, by the way, so I'll have to see about that. And just to kind of show you how that did, this is the one that I was scrubbing that floor with, and this is the one that I made, so you can see pretty gross. Thanks for watching.